Hi, this is Leland Sklar, and you are listening to Retrospectives with John Broughton on KC Radio 97.7 FM.
Alrighty, well, before we go through a little bit of history, and I'll try not to push your memory too much, I'd like to talk about something that's quite current. I believe you've got a recording project there with your longtime colleagues, recording as the Immediate Family.
Absolutely. I am having the time of my life with this. It's pretty remarkable to be looking, across the, on stage or in the recording studio, and have, friends that I've been playing with for 50 years, right there. And in all these 50 years, we've gotten along. We've never had any psychodrama, any weird scenes or anything. That's why when Cooch called the group the Immediate Family, that was really his motivation, because we kind of are our own immediate family.
Yeah, it always seems like there's a wonderful sense of camaraderie amongst you all.
Yeah, and we finished the album. The new album is done, but the problem is with the pandemic, everything's been, it's still moving forward, but now instead of the rabbit, it's the tortoise. It sucks, but in a way, this may work out for us, because Denny Tedesco, who did the Wrecking Crew movie, is doing a documentary film about us, and that's still in the process too. So next year, maybe somewhere like towards the latter part of the first third of the year, hopefully the album will come out and the documentary film will come out.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah, perfect timing.
Pretty exciting for us. It's really very flattering.
Just going back, I believe you were initially a piano player, and classical music was an area of interest for you. Yeah.
I started studying piano when I was 5 years old, and motivated by the Liberace TV show. I saw him playing piano, and I thought, this looks so cool. And we had a piano. My mom had played piano a little bit when she was young, and it was my grandmother's piano. And so I started studying and just took to it. It was really a natural thing. But then when I was 12 years old, I went into junior high school here and assumed I would be the piano player in the orchestra, and all that. But needless to say, there was like 50 kids that played piano. And the music teacher said, we need a string bass player. And he pulled out an old K blonde upright and set it in my arms, showed me how to hold it. And I plucked one note, felt that vibration, and I was sold. I said, let's do it. And kind of never looked back.
So it was pretty much love at first sight with the bass.
It really was. It was that beautiful blonde I fell in love with. Her name was Kay.
So when you first hooked up with the other guys as The Section back in the early 70s, what were your hopes initially for that band at that time? Were you looking at the full-on working and touring band, or was the session element already starting to creep in? Well,
the way we actually came together was with James Taylor around 1972, it must have been. When we started with James in 1970, the band was Danny Korchmar, myself, Russ Kunkel, and Carole King was our piano player. And then we kept encouraging her to do some of her songs. And the next thing you know, she goes and records Tapestry and has like the biggest album in the world. So she had to move on. And I was doing an album with two artists, Tom Jans and Jans, and Mimi Farina. And Mimi was Joan Baez's younger sister.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so when we were in the studio, there was a keyboard player on those sessions that I had never met before named Craig Durgee. And I contacted Peter Asher, and I said, I think I found the Carol's replacement. So Craig joined us, and so the four of us were on the road with James, and we were just the backup band. I mean, and I'm not saying just the backup band denigrating way, but we were the backup band. And but during the course of things, we would stay, like James would do really short sound checks, and then we would hang and jam, and we loved playing together. So we would just play and play and play. And somebody one day said, "Oh, check this out," and they played us a tape that they had recorded, and we said, "Man, that's great. Who's that?" And they went, "Oh, that was your sound check today." And so we kind of just looked at each other and said, maybe this is worth pursuing. And Peter Asher got us a deal with Warner Brothers Records. James Taylor named the band. He said, "Look, you guys are a rhythm section. Why not just call it the Section?" And I think the problem for us was the direction that we were really drawn towards was like rock fusion. And I think the label assumed that because of our pedigree with all the artists we'd worked with, that they were going to get something like the Eagles or Burrito Brothers or Poco or one of those kind of bands.
Yeah.
And they really didn't quite know what to do with us. So, but we would go out with James and we were the opening act and play our set, and then we would come back on with James and play his show, and then we were doing the same thing with Jackson Browne and opening his show and then coming out and playing with him. And during the course of the 70s, we did 3 albums, 2 on Warner's and then 1 on Capitol. And we ended up with like this really loyal kind of fan base, but not a commercial success. But it's really funny. If I go to Japan now and I go in, there's still like Tower Records and stuff in Tokyo.
Yep.
I go in there and there's still a rack of our stuff in there. So they're really loyal to the band. And but you know, all these years later, Dan Cooch got a record deal with a label called Vivid Records in Japan. And when it came time to fulfill his recording obligation with them, he ended up calling me and Russ, and he was shocked that we were in town that week. And Waddy was on the road, I think, with Stevie Nicks, but he came in at the end of the week, did 1 day of tracking with us, and then he did, I think, a day or 2 of overdub guitars. And Cooch, when he moved from back east back to Los Angeles, hooked up with Steve Postel, and so they developed a relationship. And Steve came in the studio with us and helped with pre-production and played on it. And he just seemed like a logical fit to join up with us. And that's kind of where it really happened very quickly. Jackson Browne gave us his studio to do the album in, with Nico Bolas engineering, and we cut the whole album. I mean, we were in and out probably in 4 or 5 days with it. And then with the new album, it was the same thing. Jackson let us use his studio, and we went in and we went in prepared, and having done this for a half a century, we understand the process. So we don't go in and waste a lot of time. We're prepared when we arrive and go for like first or second take performances to capture the most magical moments, and not working things out in the studio. So, and everything was hauling along really beautifully. And then the pandemic hit and kind of put the skids on things. So, we just released an EP last Friday and screamed a live concert on Saturday. And we're going to have another EP coming out probably maybe towards the end of the year, depending on album release schedule. We might do one more just to fill the space, so that we don't spend too much time away from people. Yeah. But I love it. I'm so thrilled to be with as we always refer to each other as my brothers, and still really enjoying making music. And this new album is really one of the best things we've ever done. I'm so proud of it, and I can distance myself from projects and thoroughly enjoy them as a spectator, and not scrutinize things and be micro thinking my bass parts or anything like that. To me, I can still sit back and listen to something and stuff that I'm on and say, God, I really love that, or God, that sucks, depending on the project. So,
looking over your list of credits, you've been incredibly diverse in terms of the styles of music that you've been involved with over the years. Is that something you've actively sought out, working in a wide range of styles, or has it purely been a matter of accepting the work that comes to you regardless?
It's really that. When the phone rings, I would say 99.99% of the time I say yes, and I don't know what I'm saying yes to. Once in a while, I've gotten an iffy feeling. I know this is not going to be a good thing. I'm going to get ripped off, or something's not cool about it, and I'll say no. But I would really say almost every time I say yes, and that's really kind of the fun of being able to, one day I'm working with Alice Cooper, and then the next day I was working with Reba McEntire, or things like that.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a house that had a tremendously eclectic music collection. My folks listened to all kinds of stuff, from classical to jazz to pop, and so I grew up with my ear attuned to lots of different things. And I think the thing I've really enjoyed so much is the diversity of styles and artists. It's a double-edged sword. There's times where, I would look at somebody like Flea, and I'd go, Jesus, all he's ever had to know. I mean, even though he's a good musician and plays other things, but I thought, ultimately, all this guy's ever really had to do is the Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
And he can go out and make, millions of dollars and just know this one set, and that's it. And I kind of look at myself and I go, basically every day when, before all this happened, I would have to join a new band, come up with new bass parts, new songs. And I thought, there would have been a time where it would have really been nice to have been in a band that was successful, and I could have just kicked back, done that, and then taken, the money and gone off and done other things that I would have found interesting. But on the other hand, I think I would have really missed so much by not having the career I've had, and had the opportunity to really play with so many different kinds of artists, from Julio Iglesias to, some metal, Japanese metal band, or, whatever. So I feel very fortunate. I feel really very fortunate.
From an outsider looking in, the impression I've always had of you is someone with a great work ethic that becomes fully invested in the project you're working with, and not a player that just walks into the studio and goes through the motions without taking much personal interest in the work they're helping to create. Is that a trap that you think some players do fall into?
Oh, absolutely. It's a trap where it's just a gig to them. And that's one of the things I've really emphasized when I do like clinics and master classes. I really tell people, I said, when I get called, to me, there's when the phone rings, there's two options. You can say yes or no. And if you say yes, obligations come with that yes. And when you go in the studio, that might be that person's only shot at ever recording. And you need to go in there prepared to make this the best experience they've ever had. Now, you may not be absolutely in love with the material, or, think that anybody's actually ever is going to hear it. But in the moment of creation, you give it everything you've got. I look at the most neophyte artist I might get called to work with the same work ethic I would look at Phil Collins or James Taylor or Toto, any of them. I don't think I would look at them any differently. And I really have always had a real strong work ethic. Like if a session starts at 10 in the morning, I'm usually there 9:15. I get my gear in, I get tuned up. If there's charts or chord sheets, I look through everything if it's already there, just to see if there's any surprises. When the artist gets there, or the producer, and I've never worked with them, I immediately go over and introduce myself and hang with them, just to get a feel for them. And then after you've cut tracks, you go in the control room and you listen back and become involved. You don't just sit there on your phone in the studio dicking around. If you have any ideas, I always tell people, I said, look, everything I do is etched in mud. I just, I'll throw ideas out, and if they don't like them, it doesn't offend me at all. I say, just, I'm just, throwing this out. But, because there's many times, especially in the past decade, where people have pretty good home studios, so they make their own demos at home, and sometimes they show up with stuff and you just kind of go, what are we going to do? I mean, in the old days of a guy coming in, playing his guitar and singing a song, and then you sketch out a chart, or you just learn it and you go through the process, that's one thing. But so many people now, they come in and they're, they say, we want you to do what you do, but they're so married to the parts that they've crafted over the past year or something on a demo that they kind of go, well, kind of like that part I've got on this thing. So then suddenly, you're doing what they wanted in there, and your creative juices are kind of diverted.
Yeah.
But that's the nature of the beast, and I don't worry about it. I just want, because I know at the end of the day, I'm going on to another project, and those people are going to live and die potentially by that day's process. So you just want to give them, the very best you possibly can.
Talking about the musical chemistry, the relationship between a bass player and a drummer, as a rule for you through the years, has that been a chemistry that's been reasonably easy to find, or something you have to work towards?
Really depends on the player. I've been kind of blessed over my career to have worked with a lot of great drummers. So the occasion that I get called for a project and I go in, and like maybe the drummer on the project is a friend of the artist or something, and they don't really have experience in the studio, or if they've had it, it's been very limited. Sometimes it can be a bit of a struggle, but I kind of look at it as an opportunity to help somebody along. I don't just sit there and kind of go, this sucks, I just want to go home, I hate this. But I would say, like, the major bulk of my career, I've been fortunate to work with the best drummers in the world. So it's been kind of a non-issue, and the focus that happens is not how am I going to hook up with this guy, but really it goes to a completely other level of interaction. And the difference between working, like one day I could be working with somebody like Lee Von Helm, and the next day working with Dave Weckl or Billy Cobham. So, the diversity within that instrument is dramatic. But I think most of the guys, we all tend to very quickly feel each other out and find a really good common ground for what we're really there to do. And I've never really had to struggle very much. The Jim Keltners, the Russ Kunkles, the Hal Blaines, all these people, John Robinson, Simon Phillips, and Charlie Watts. Every one of these guys has an absolutely unique signature.
Yeah.
And you you learn to suss that out really quick, where they lay their backbeat. Some guys, sit right on top of the beat. Some guys are like dead center in it. Other guys lay back, but their kick drum is maybe pushing. And you kind of have to get your head wrapped around it pretty quickly so that you can then look at the relationship that you really are there for. And the bass and drums is really, to me, absolutely the most critical relationship within a band. I mean, you can kind of throw anything on a great bass and drum track, and you can get away with a lot. But if it's not there, it doesn't matter if you're Paco de Luca or John McLaughlin or Steve Lukather. It's not going to be as good as it can be if your foundation isn't there. Yeah,
for sure. Have you always managed to keep a happy balance of live work and studio work for you through the years?
Yeah. It's changed over the past several years, only because the industry has really changed, and where like 70s, 80s, I mean, kind of all the way up through the early 2000s, there was a lot of music being recorded, but in the past few years, there's so many more indie projects where people are finding people that maybe, either they found people that made money in other industries, or they've made money in other industries, and now they're living their dream by making the record they always dreamed of. And under those circumstances, there isn't that much work going on as compared to kind of the golden age, especially through the 70s and 80s. But I've pretty much really tried to keep as much of a balance as I could. It was interesting, like especially in the 70s, where I'd be in the studio working, and then a tour would be coming up, and the really diehard studio guys would go, how can you do that, man? You leave town, somebody else is going to take your gig. And they would never take any road work or anything. And I would look at them, I said, really, to me, my juice is live.
Yeah.
I that's where I really am at my best. And but I told them, I said, look, I treat this very professionally. When I know a tour is coming up, I immediately would contact the artists, producers, whoever would be booking me for work, and I'd say, look, at the end of the month, I'm leaving for 6 weeks, and give them my schedule, and then I would start calling them like 2 weeks before the end of the tour, just saying, here's when I'm going to be back. And there were times when people would move a project up so that I could do it before I left town, or they would wait until I got back to town. But the thing is, you engage them in things to the point where you let them know that they're incredibly important to you. This is the relationship you have, and you don't just disappear out of town and they're calling you and you're not returning calls because you're on the road and not picking up your messages. So I've always looked at that as a very important thing to do, is to keep them within your own loop as to what's going on. But I think if somebody said to me, look, you have a choice. You can either spend the rest of your career on tour or in the studio, I would pick on tour, with hands down. I love the idea of immediacy. If I play a note on a show, that note's gone, it's done, we're on to the next. You play that note in the studio and it can be scrutinized for a week. And so there's an element of that I love making records and I love the process of it, but there is a side of it that can really become, a little too microscopic for me, where, man, when you walk out on stage and you're just locked in and the band's killing and you're looking at the audience and they're we did a Zoom thing recently for the Berkeley College. And one of the guys on it was Omar Hakim, who I love playing with. And one of the things that he said, the important thing is, he said, don't lose the dance floor. And I thought, what a brilliant way of putting it, man. When those people are out there and they're shaking their butts and rocking, man, you've just won the battle. That's the whole thing, is you engage that audience and they are right there with you. And to me, that's the greatest magic possible, and that's really the biggest tragedy of this pandemic, is the absence of live music. It's everybody I know is so chomping at the bit to get back out on the road, but it has to be done when things are safe, and it's far from safe at this point. So we just have to, keep. We're kind of like an airplane that's got problems, and it's circling the airport dumping fuel. That's kind of where we're at right now.
Exactly.
So, myself and other guys, we're just doing as much as we can within the parameters of this situation we find ourselves in, and there are options in terms of live streaming and doing concerts and things that are virtual, but it's still, there's nothing like walking out on stage and just having a bunch of maniacs out there in front of you that are just locked in. We were fortunate that we just finished basically 2.5 years with Phil Collins on the road, and really had an incredible run for the past couple of years, and because it wouldn't be happening at this point.
No,
so
not at all.
we got in kind of under the weather. I mean, we had one actual gig in February with the immediate family, and that was the end of it. And we did a rock legends cruise from Florida to Grand Caymans and back. And that was right after that is when, as they say, the shit hit the fan, and a whole year of work disappeared instantly.
Yeah.
And but I can't bitch about it, because every musician I know is dealing with it that are in every genre. And to me, the thing that really breaks my heart is the crews guys, all the roadies and all the people that are involved with doing concerts, because so many of them are really living paycheck to paycheck. And when this stuff shuts down, they're really in dire straits, where most of the players I know will survive this. And we're not going to lose our homes or anything like that. But, I mean, it's a huge impact on us. But a lot of these people are really in pretty dire straits at this point. I just did. Do you know who Whispering Bob is? Bob Harris?
Yes, yeah.
The old gray whistle test.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, we just did a fundraiser. I did a thing where they recorded the old song "Stand by Me." Yeah, I played bass on it. There was tons of musicians and stuff contributed to this, and it's all to raise money for musicians in the UK that are suffering through this. And I was thrilled to be involved with that. I mean, it's so important.
Oh, absolutely. We just got to all knuckle down and hope we get through this.
Yeah.
Hey, a lot of people who maybe haven't looked too deeply into your body of work would tend to associate you with that singer-songwriter movement of the 70s in particular. And I've seen the term Mellow Mafia used to describe you guys. Were you comfortable with that term at all?
Well, I think I don't understand it at all. I mean, I don't know where mafia fits into this. I mean, certainly all of us were involved in kind of this mellow, sensitive part of the music scene with the James Taylors and Jackson Browns and Linda Ronstadts and Carole Kings and Crosby and Nash and CSN, all these. But all those artists can rock as good as anybody. So the whole mellow thing was kind of weird. But, it's one of these things that a lot of times, especially press or any of these other formats, they need to hang a description on. And somebody came up with that, but we all looked at each other and just kind of went, what is that? Because, during the same time I was doing James Taylor, I was doing Spectrum with Billy Cobham.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's hardly, Mellow Mafia time. But if people, if they choose, and when I met James Taylor, I was in hard rock bands. I was totally into Cream and Hendrix and 10 Years After and, all that, The Who. So, I mean, for me, when I met James and started working with him, it was an adjustment for me because I had never really played that kind of music before. And, but, people can do whatever they want, but if they start to dig in a little bit deeper, they'll find other things. And, but, like I've always told people, I said, I'm just really, really happy to be a working musician. I mean, to me, that's been the entire basis of my life, and that I've never, other than very early on, I've never had to have another job to pay my bills. Music has always been the thing that got me through everything. So, and if people, because I've got this YouTube channel going and a bunch of stuff I've done since the pandemic hit. And it's really fascinating just to be having people come on the channel and they're kind of going, oh, I had no idea you played on that, or what's really that, and it's been a real kind of an eye-opening education on both sides of the screen for me.
I've been looking at some of those videos. You've been having some copyright issues there, haven't you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, the thing that's weird about that, and a guy just posted me today who's been keeping an eye on it, and he said my video today was the 300th video I've put up since the pandemic began.
Wow.
So, but, the thing I don't understand about this stuff is I can't monetize my YouTube channel. I mean, if I sit there and I say, I got blocked again today and there's no music involved, I can make a couple of bucks on that. But generally out of that 300 videos that are up, I would say probably 290 of those I don't make a penny on because they're copyright protected. And what just evades my sense of reason about this business that I'm in is the fact that if the people who are doing blocking and things like that would actually read people's comments where people are saying, I never heard of this person before, I love them, I'm going to go get some more, I'm going to buy some of their music. What is the purpose of having music available if you're going to block people from hearing it and discovering it? And almost every video I have up says copyright protected on it. But I've also had issues with pure blockage where the minute I put the video up, it's taken off. And there's some kind of an algorithm or something. And I think, if I was doing an indie movie project and I went and took somebody's music and put it in there without their permission, man, come after me and throw the book at me. I totally think that sucks. But the idea of having really an educational tool, and I'm only playing songs that I was involved with, that I worked on. I mean, I've had put up stuff from the band Barefoot Servants that I was in, and I got blocked for that. And here it's the music that we did. So it's really quite beyond me. But that's part of the reason, I think, why the music business is in some of the dire straits that it's in, is because there is such a lack of foresight and understanding of where technology is at, where the audience is at. I mean, these artists, a lot of these artists that I'm turning people on to. The other day I did an artist named Roger Voudouris, and we did his record back in the 80s, and then he died. So pretty much, as soon as I put that up, people went, oh, God, I remember that song from way back then, or Alan O'Day when we had something like Undercover Angel or something. These artists are long gone. And this is a chance for people to rediscover them and give them more of a legacy. And if they buy the stuff, then it helps the artist's estate. So what is the problem? Yeah. So I get frustrated. I was fortunate. Like I was going to do a song of Carly Simon's called Waterfall that I recorded with her, and the minute it went up, Warner Brothers blocked it, took it off, and I just got so pissed off because I'm not only playing this, relearning the song quickly, playing it, but I'm also telling all these stories about the process and who was there and all this stuff. And I called Carly. I mean, I know Carly, so I called her up and I said, well, you're not going to believe what happened. And she was furious, called her manager who called me, and he got a hold of Warner Brothers and made them unblock that video. But good. The thing is, they only unblocked that video. They said, give us the URL for that video, but they wouldn't unblock if anybody else was going to do it. They would be in the same boat I was in. It's not like they opened it up to say. So I don't get it. No. I think that the sharing of music is so important, especially at a time like this when people are in lockdown and they're looking for things to help get them through the day, and to be able to sit and listen to music that I'm putting up. I mean, so many people have sent me like pictures or videos of the family eating dinner, watching my videos on their TV. And they've come to, I'm kind of like turned into Mr. Rogers or something. But I love it, and I embrace that. And to me, the opportunity to revisit all these songs that I've worked on and talk about the artists, and so many of them, I think tomorrow I'm going to talk about Spencer Davis because he died today. That's right, yeah. And I did an album called Mousetrap with him back in the 70s, so I'm going to dig that up and see if there's something on there that I want to present, and then talk about Spencer. And, I just don't get that there's, people that look at that as a threat to music. I mean, the biggest threat to music to me is the inability to enjoy it. Exactly. So it defies logic. It really does. Yeah, it really does. I mean, they stand there and pull out a gun and shoot themselves in the foot every time a decision needs to be made. And you just kind of go, you're idiots, you're imbeciles. and I've dealt with record company people and stuff over the years. And like when we used to do sessions, you'd be in there in the evening and some guy would show up with a satin jacket with the label of the logo on the back and still wearing his sunglasses with some girl that he's hoping to score with, and we're just going, get the fuck out of here. Just, you have nothing to do with what we're doing here. It's like when I watch, the Grammys or any of those shows, I kind of watch it and I kind of go, I have absolutely nothing to do with what I'm looking at right here. It's a weird place. But man, it would never dissuade me from doing the music. And just like with politics, I won't go down without a fight. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna be in the thick of it as much as I possibly can.
Would there be a career-defining session for you, one that you could point at and say, well, my career may not have turned out the way it did had I not done that session?
Well, certainly I would tend to think the very first album I did with James Taylor that put us all on the map with him was probably really pivotal, even though that wasn't the first album I ever recorded. The first actual album I think I did was after we played the Troubadour with James, and we had not yet gone in the studio to do, I think it was either One Man Dog or Mudslide Slim. I forget which the first one I did after Sweet Baby James. But I think Brian Hyland may have been at our show at the Troubadour, because the first album I actually got hired to do, I think, was Brian Hyland, who had back in the 60s had the novelty tune Itsy Bitsy Teensy Weensy Yellow Polka Dot Bikini. And but he went on, had a long career, but he was produced by Del Shannon.
Yes.
And when I was on the road with Phil, somebody actually showed up at one of the gigs with that album, asked me to sign it, and it blew my mind because I'd never seen it before. But I would think, that was probably a really important album, was doing James's first. I would think that Spectrum with Billy Cobham was in that jazz rock fusion period. That is still one of the albums that people talk about. I mean, every time I see Jeff Beck, he comes running up to me and he goes, "Stratus, man, Stratus." And he said Billy, that Tommy Boland's playing on that changed his perspective on guitar playing.
Wow.
So that was a really pivotal project. And but they all have had their things. When we did Running on Empty with Jackson Browne, that was one of the really great live albums probably ever done. Oops, sorry.
It was such an ambitious concept too for a live album, wasn't it?
Oh, it was ambitious, and it was also honest, because there's been so many live albums that actually they all went back in the studio and started going through their stuff and fixing things, and my solo suck. And ultimately, the only thing live is the audience on it, and they've gone back. And where with Jackson, exactly what went down in the bus, in hotel rooms, on gigs, is all represented on that album completely honestly. So, but I mean, they all. I have memories. I mean, I was fortunate, and I'm not going to pat myself on the back over this by any means, but I never drank, I never did drugs. So I do have a clarity about my career that, it's like when James Taylor gave up doing drugs and stuff, he said that he lost like at least 10 years of his life during that, and he added about 10 hours a day to his life afterwards. And I feel fortunate that I can look back on, being in the studio with people like Anthony Newley, or the Weather Girls doing It's Raining Men, or Helen Reddy doing I Am Woman, and Barbara Streisand, and all these different people. I have really good clarity about what went down, and I feel fortunate for that.
I stumbled across another interview with you the other day where you were quoted as saying you considered yourself a sloppy and incompetent player, which really staggered me to read. Can you elaborate on that, if you did indeed say it?
Well, I don't know if I said incompetent. I mean, I can't remember saying it, but also a lot of times I talk and don't really think I could be a good politician. My mouth can go without a lot of thought process involved. Hold on just a second. I'm doing an interview with Melbourne. Okay. Yeah, we can after I'm done with this. Okay. No, we're fine. What I really kind of meant by that was there's a lot of bass players that I'm aware of, certainly in Los Angeles, that are very, very analytical and anal about their playing. Everything is very precise, very accurate, and I tend to think of myself much not sloppy, but maybe greasier, where I don't really think about it that way. I do a lot of glissandos in my playing, where I'll slide between parts and stuff, where most guys would go precisely from like a C to a G. I might slide up to that G and then throw a little wiggle in or something, where I try to play with as much personality as I can within the part, as compared to just a very precise version of it. And a lot of times, like, I'll hear records that I've played on, and I can tell immediately it's me, because it's an interesting thing for me. Is on so many projects I've worked on, I'm there for basic tracking, and sometimes I don't recognize the song when it's done, because first off, I haven't heard the singer. We've done it without a vocalist. We just cut a track. They've come in and sweetened with strings or horns or background voices, and it takes me a moment to go, something is familiar about that, and then it suddenly dawns on me I had played on it, but we played in such a primitive state that by the time it's finished, it's almost unrecognizable. But I can tell it's me just by my approach to the parts. So I think that's kind of what I was meaning to say at that point, was really, there is a certain sloppiness to it, and a lot of people I've worked for over the years have said to me, they said, man, I just love your placement and how you get there, and just, the personality in your playing as compared to the preciseness and the almost analytical quality of so many players.
And just one thing before I let you go, Len, I'm sure you'd be happy to talk about Lee's Clubhouse. Tell us about that.
The Clubhouse?
Yeah.
Oh, well, what happened? I'll give you a story of how this all came to be. When we had done Phil's tour, this past one, the Not Dead Yet tour, people were writing to me going, bass players going, man, we heard you guys, but a lot of our gigs were in either big arenas or stadiums. And they said, look, we could hear you because we have a really great front of house guy, Michel Collan. But they said, a lot of nuances were it was hard to hear. So when the pandemic hit, I was kind of thinking about what they had asked. And so I had Michelle send me a board mix of our show, actually from Adelaide. And what I had it in my computer, so I plugged in a little Bose speaker into my headphone jack in the computer, and then set up a bass amp next to me, and set my iPhone up where people could see me, and then just kind of played around trying to get a mix between the speaker and my bass amp, where the bass part was sitting on top of the track rather than in the track.
Oh, yeah.
And because this way they could hear like every note. It's not certainly the way I would ever want to listen to it or the way I like to play. I like to be internal in the track. But to do what I wanted to do, I really needed to place myself on top of the track. And about 3 songs, and so what I did is I put Phil's show up, and I did 1 song a day, starting from the first song straight through the show. And by the 3rd song, the 3rd day, I had people writing to me going, man, we love your YouTube channel. And I'm going, what are you talking about? And they said, oh, no, that stuff you're doing on YouTube. I said, what do you mean channel? And somehow I created a channel without even realizing it. And I worked my way through the album. The only song I haven't done from that show is Take Me Home. I figure I'll save that for the very last video I ever do from the... just before they load me in the crematorium, I'll play that. But I got to the end of it, and I thought, well, hell, I'm having a great time with this. So I just, then I started pulling out Toto. I started pulling out, all kinds of things. Started going through the discography. Would pull up, the section or Vince Gill or whatever, and within the framework of that, I started talking to, there's a guy on YouTube named Rick Beato. And Rick is like one of the real pioneer guys on. I think he's been doing it like 10 years, and he has a site where he talks about like the 10 best guitar intros or the 10 best drum fills, or he was an educator, so he talks about all these things. And I started talking to him, and he said, you should talk to my friend Aaron, who's really setting me up. And I talked to Aaron, and we decided that it would be fun to have a clubhouse off of the channel. And so what I've done with that is, since YouTube is completely free, I mean, nobody, all they have to do is, and they don't even have to subscribe. They can just come and watch, but it's fun when they subscribe. And kind of, it's up to almost, I think, 140,000 people on the channel now.
Wow.
But so we created this clubhouse where for $10 a month, I do 2 live streams. And the live streams are in an average of 2.5 to 3 hours, where I just sit and talk to, people chat. I read the chat window and talk to all these people and answer questions and do all that stuff with them. And it's really become vibrant. I mean, I'm getting the same people coming back, and I'm doing it every 2 weeks. I've kind of got a schedule of this. And then on an elite level of the clubhouse, for $75 a month, I'll do a live one-on-one Skype or FaceTime with somebody, and it's supposed to be 10 minutes, but I run the schedule where sometimes I'm doing like 20 to 30 minutes with each person, depending on how many there are. And I've got like the same bunch of people coming back, and a guy was like worried the other day he wasn't going to be able to make it because his daughter, he was having their first grandchild, but he made it, and he was showing me pictures of the baby. I mean, it's become like a family. And so that's going on. And then within all of this too, I ended up doing a book, which people have been hounding me for years, but it's not like a tell-all reading book. Since 2004, I've been taking pictures of people giving me the finger, flipping me off. And I've got about 12,000 photographs of everybody imaginable on this, from musicians, athletes, the man on the street, you name it. It's humanity. And I got together with a guy who does books, and we've pared this down to 6,000 female. Oops, hold on. I'm gonna. My dogs just came out, and the next door neighbor's dogs are they're all at the fence next to me, so I'm just moving over here. It's one of these situations that we've ended up creating an absolutely gorgeous coffee table book.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's printed, and it is now being bound, and I've been working for the past couple of weeks with the guy I'm doing the book with, and a girl, and we've now got a website where the book will be ordered. And at the end, in a month from now, I'm taking delivery of 10,000 books. And
goodness.
So now I'm an entrepreneur. I've got a website for it, and on that website we're going to build that, because in college I was an illustrator, so I have a bunch of drawings that I'm going to do real high-end prints off of these and have those. We're going to have swag, and in the clubhouse there's also like pictures that people can get that I sign them and send them to them. There's T-shirts and hoodies and and bags. I mean, I'm just looking at every opportunity to stay engaged and viable in a business that really is kind of stagnant at this point. And I'm doing things I never thought I would do, but I'm having an absolutely fantastic time doing it.
Oh, if nothing else, you've found some wonderful ways to keep busy during a horrible time.
I'm busier. Yeah. I'm busier now than I would have been had this not happened.
Yeah.
Because like when you go out, a lot of my was touring overseas. When you do that, you learn what you got to do, and then you work 3 hours a day or something, and then the rest of the time is yours. I'm at this all day long. I mean, I'm putting in long days, and but I'm really absolutely thoroughly enjoying this this period. So,
Hey, Lee, thank you so much for being so generous with your time today. It's been an absolute honour to speak with you, and plenty to look forward to there with the documentary and the album with the immediate family. And we hope that once all this pandemic situation is over and touring's an option again, we'd love to see the immediate family down here. That would be awesome.
Oh God, you have no idea how much I want to come there. I mean, I have so many friends in Australia, and plus, I mean, my ties there, like being with Billy Thorpe, from our Children of the Sun days and all of that. I would love to come down, and I'm like a massive fan of Rebecca Johnson and her band. So I talk about them all the time. But I'll throw in the website for the book.
Yes.
It's lelandsklar'sbeard.com because somebody took my name and I couldn't use it. So we just said, well, what the hell are we going to do? So they're probably holding it, hoping I'll give them money to buy it from them. But I had the hell with that. So it's just all one word, lelandsklar'sbeard.com.
No worries.
And that's going to be going up, I think, this Friday is when it's actually going to kick in and people can start ordering the book and doing all that. And then plus, please come to my YouTube channel. And also the immediate family has a YouTube channel and a Facebook page and Instagram and all that. So please come join us because we're having a wonderful time and it would be really fun to share this all.
I'll be sure to mention all those numerous times when this goes to air. Lee, thanks so much for your time. Right. It's been an honor speaking with you.
Well, it's a pleasure, and if you ever want to do part 2, I'm here for you.
Terrific. I'll keep that in mind. Take care.
Okay, John. You take good care, too, and have a great day.
All the best.
Stay safe.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.